What's the most horrifying how do you not know how to do this moment you've experienced with another person whilst adulting? A girl I knew in college. Her dad called once to remind her that every so often she needed to put oil in her truck. She did. Then her truck started smelling like French fries and then died. Even after trying to explain it, she couldn't understand that this was directly related to the quart of vegetable oil she put in the motor. Another time, another party back in college, a guy demonstrated how to shotgun a beer by shoving a steak knife into it and twisting it. Also some of his hand. He panicked like crazy, made all kinds of noises and waved his hand around freaking out and getting blood all over. He was a bit drunk, though, and these things happen. He got a bandage on it a minute later and he was fine. When my friend bought a house a month into home ownership, she asked me, very off, when the city was coming to cut her lawn because it's starting to look like weeds. It was awkward when I had to explain that she needs to cut her own lawn or hire someone. If she waited long enough, the city may have come and cut it for her. Also a citation and a bill. I had to jump a friend's car that wouldn't start. It had a hard time but I finally got it running. She immediately turns off the car and says, "Thanks so much, I'll call you later." I had a relative try to put her son on the school bus's first day of kindergarten and got upset when the driver refused to let him on because he wasn't on the list. She never registered him for school and just thought she could put him on the bus and send him. Somehow, of all the absurd things I have read here till now, this is the one that gets me. This is being oblivious of the real world at another level. Had to ask my roommate to please wash his hands after touching raw chicken. He was cool to just go about his day before I asked. He thought I was being a wacko neat freak. Same guy also thought his sheets wouldn't fit in the washing machine, so he just never washed them. When I asked him please not drop silverware down the garbage disposal and leave it, he said I had too many house rules. I'm forever disturbed by the amount of people who don't seem to have a problem with touching raw chicken and not washing their hands afterwards. My ex-best friend had told me that she had needed to buy another new vacuum cleaner, the third that month. I asked her what was wrong with it and she said it's not picking things up anymore, so I asked if she had dumped out the container. She didn't know that was a thing. I worked graveyard shift and I had to explain to a co-worker that at midnight, 12 o'clock 0 hours, it is the start of a new day. She then had an anxiety attack because I was telling her that today is not Monday anymore. Today is Tuesday now. For as long as I can remember, my father had red eyes after showering. I didn't even think about it. One day as a teenager, a friend slept over and in the morning she saw my dad dressed and ready for work, freshly showered, red-eyed. She asked him why his eyes were red and he simply said shampoo. She then very carefully and as respectfully as she could muster asked him why he didn't close his eyes, and he laughed and said, "What do you think? I'm an idiot? Closing my eyes in the shower? Sheesh." My dad did a lot of things that embarrassed me, but that one was pretty high up there. Everyone saying he was getting high. You have no idea how badly I wish that was the case. I think your dad might have been smoking doobies in the bathroom. Grown boss woman telling me it's easier to wipe, do one big wipe, from butt to vag, instead of wiping vag first then butt last. Well, guess we finally found out why she suffers from multiple UTIs a month. I'm not even a woman and that is abhorrent. Holy frick. Not really the same but kinda fits. Had a friend complain the movie they were watching didn't tell you who won the war. It was a World War I movie. In her defense, I'm not sure she knew it was a World War I movie, but I still found it pretty funny. That's because no one won. Girl I went to HS with. Why do people say a quarter of an hour? Like what does that even mean? Me. It's 15 minutes. Because 15 is a fourth of 60, so that's a quarter of an hour. Her. Looking at me like I'm a freaking idiot, but a quarter is 25. Me. I was reading off measurements to a guy at work. Checked his notes when finished. Came upon 3/25. 3/4. Ugh. I had to teach my friend how to tie his shoes. He either wore Velcro or tucked the laces into the shoe up until that point. Age PLZ. I had a friend who I noticed took Mucinex a lot. I've used it occasionally when I've been congested, but it seemed abnormal how often I saw him taking it. I finally asked him why he was taking it one time. because he didn't seem sick at all, and he looked puzzled and said, "Well, I think I'm getting sick." I pressed further and he said, "Because it's an expectorant." It turns out he thought you take an expectorant when you are expecting to get sick. That's actually pronounced analgesic, not analgesic. Sir, the pills go in your mouth. I had a roommate at university whose cooking method was put baked beans in a Tupperware, seal the lid, turn on microwave. When lid pops and explodes beans everywhere, they're cooked. So in light of that, I'll share another story of his cooking methods. One time I came home to find the oven on and smoking a bit. Opened the door to find what was an entire lasagne bubbling on the bottom of the oven. He bought himself a frozen lasagna. Step 1, remove outer packaging. Step 2, place on middle tray of preheated oven. He literally thought that outer packaging was anything outside of the lasagne. So he tore away that shell that the lasagne cooks in and placed it straight on the rack. So as it defrosted, it just fell through the rack and all over the oven. And you can guarantee he'd refuse to clean the microwave too. One of roommates in college would go through plastic spatulas like crazy. She'd melt them and wouldn't say anything about it. She'd only tell me when I'd go to use it and wonder why it was messed up. She'd always say it was due to the spatula being made of cheap plastic. I finally caught her one day. She'd be cooking something and would walk away leaving the plastic spatula in the pan while IT was still on. For those asking, yes, I know there are heat resistant, wooden, and metal spatulas. Remember, this was in college though, so I went to Walmart and just bought the cheapest non-stick pan and utensil sets I could find. Honestly, I liked them well enough and they fit my purposes. I never melted a spatula because I don't leave my utensils sitting in a hot pan. I also wouldn't allow my roommate to buy a metal spatula since that would mess up the Teflon. I have stopped myself from doing that many a time, because their parents used to leave metal spatulas in the pan, and it never occurred to them that maybe, just maybe, plastic is a little easier to melt than metal. This is going to sound weird, but manage a budget, or just in general being money smart. One of my old roommates was really bright academically, but he was terrible with money. Each semester he would start off with a pile of cash from his parents and roughly blow through it after about 2 months. I first noticed it with his dining dollars on campus. Every day it seemed like he would buy the most expensive sushi option on campus every day. We're talking maybe $18, which isn't terrible if it's once in a while, but this was every day. It's also college dining hall sushi, so the quality was also just okay without even considering the money spent. Of course, around midterms when his dining dollars would run out and he'd sort of panic and whine that he couldn't afford anything. But what was so strange is that when he would start to low, he sort of laugh about not knowing any way we could avoid going broke while continuing to buy the most expensive option. But he'd also get really defensive when people wanted to talk to him about this. Eventually when he moved off campus it was the same thing. For the first 2 months he'd feast. He'd get delivery constantly, ordering just way too much food, and of course he'd never share it. But then once he'd nearly run out of cash, he'd buy like an emergency 50-pack of hot dogs and only eat that for the rest of the semester, while telling everyone else that they were lucky they had money to spend, and how not everyone had it so easy when it comes to money. He'd never directly say it, but there were always a lot of implied insults. I was a drill sergeant in the US Army. The first time you have to show an adult man how to shave is a little shocking. The worst one was the 24-year-old male that didn't know how to tie his boots. He had gotten through reception and pickup day by tightly lacing his boots and tucking the laces in. As they would loosen up throughout the day, he would just pull them tight again. The first Sunday I noticed his boots were barely staying on as he was marching back from dinner. I asked him what was wrong with them, as it's common for privates to have the wrong size boots when they get to us. He didn't know how to tie them at all, not a single knot. I spent an hour showing him how I tie my boots and different techniques if he gets hot spots or blisters. Then I assigned his bunkmate the task of making sure they were tied correctly when he left the bay. I kind of understood it. He came from a super poor neighborhood, single mom that worked all the time. He didn't have a lot of positive influences before joining the army. I was a little worried about his comprehension skills since basic rifle marksmanship is kind of intense and takes some focus, but he did well. I was very happy that on family day he had his low quarters tied and was proud that he had learned so much. Ooh, I got one. I work as an EMT for a private company, so we mostly deal with nursing homes and the elderly. One day when I was about 6-8 months in, I got assigned a partner who was in my orientation class. He was a little older than me at the time, like mid-20s, but he seemed a little childish. Maybe he's just sheltered, I think to myself. Anyways, we got a patient I've had a few times before. She was a sweet, little old lady with COPD and CHF living at an assisted living. Call was for pneumonia. She's prone to this stuff, so it wasn't a huge deal. Slap her on oxygen and keep her sitting up till we get to the hospital. The first red flag though, was this kid didn't know anything. He didn't know how to take a blood pressure. He couldn't find the medical history or medication on the paperwork, which is clearly labeled. He didn't even push the stretcher, just walk next to it with a hand on it. When I asked him about all that, he said my partners usually do that for me. So, I put her on an oxygen mask and sit her all the way up, mildly agitated. I tell myself it's just one shift with this kid. He's in the back with her and I tell him to just switch the oxygen from the bag, which is a small tank, to the main tank, which is huge, because with the amount of oxygen we're giving her, the bag will run out not even halfway before the hospital. It's about 25 minutes, which normally wouldn't be a huge deal. But when we pull up to the hospital and I open the back doors, I'm freaking shook. The oxygen mask isn't inflated, meaning she isn't getting oxygen. She's pale as crap. I can literally see her accessory muscles moving, struggling to breathe. And this kid was sitting behind her, with a clueless half smile on his face, looks at me and says the main tank is broken, so I left her on the bag. This woman, who needs oxygen without pneumonia, was barely breathing for at least 15 minutes, and this freaking idiot didn't even check. We take her into the hospital. I ask him to find an oxygen tank while explain to this woman's daughter what happened. He says he doesn't know where to look. I freaking find it and told him to talk to the daughter. When it's all said and done, I checked to see what's broken. He didn't turn on the tank. TLDR. EMT partner nearly kills a patient because he didn't know he had to open the oxygen tank to get oxygen to come out. Please tell me he's not an EMT anymore. This is terrifying. Didn't know how to wipe his butt, so he always had dingleberries. Safe to say it was a turn off. I am now happily married to someone with better butt hygiene. That's not a turn off, that's a massive deal breaker. Christ. This is like 10 years ago. I was dating a 32-year-old and he asked me if I wanted to get together to watch a TV show. I said sure. What time is it on? He looks it up and says to me 8 Pacific 9 Central. I asked what was confusing him and he told me he wasn't sure if the show was on at 8 or 9. My man did not know what time zone we lived in. So I was like, okay, well, you know what ocean we're near, right? Cause I was trying to get him to think about the Pacific time zone in terms of the giant body of water for which it was named, and he immediately got defensive and for real said, why would I know that? I'm from Texas. He'd been living in San Francisco for 5 years and could see the Pacific Ocean out his window. Not sure if this counts, but when I took a food safe course, someone asked if they could wash a turkey with dish soap. He failed the course. But you can wash a turkey with dish soap, just be careful not to get it in their eyes because it really stings. Was making dinner with my ex and her mom. They were talking about how they forgot to put on a can of corn to go with the meal, but that's okay, they can just microwave it, right? First it took 2 of them to use the can opener, as in they took turns because the cans are so strong. Look over and they have the can cut almost all the way around, but not around the lid. It's this weird, wavy, up and down the side of the can way. Basically took the last 1/5 of the can right off. I stare at them, but don't say anything because, hey, not my house. They've gotten this far, why point it out now and go back to what I'm doing? Moments later they congratulate themselves and move on to the next step, which apparently to both of them was just sticking the can straight in the microwave. Seconds later lots of bright flashes. Both of them leap away the microwave, so I have to come around the table and do the oh so heroic task of hitting the open button and stop the potential meltdown. The rest of the dinner was them so shocked that metal reacts like that in a microwave. Yes, even forks or spoons would do that, and how amazed they were it's never happened before. Flash forward a year and they're buying a new microwave. Turns out they've bought all their microwaves from this one store and the owner was surprised it's been so long. Turns out, He's a great guy, always helps them find the best deals and even jokes about how the extended warranty is for suckers. Oh, I have a really funny one. I hope it doesn't get buried. Years ago, I bought a friend an electric kettle as a gift. Her boyfriend, who I'm still friends with and who passed along this story, came home one night to find her running out the front door of their apartment with the flaming kettle, and she threw it into the street. She was screaming about how it was a piece of junk because when she put it on the stove, over a flame, it caught fire and started to melt. He was laughing uncontrollably when he asked, "What did you think the cord was for?" They broke up soon after. As someone from a country where kettles are basically default household items, this is painful. Every few weeks I catch my roommate trying to put his metal tea strainer in the microwave. This is in spite of the fact that our first week living in this apartment, he destroyed the microwave and had to pay for a new one because he put a metal tea strainer in the microwave. You could have left it at him making tea in the microwave. P.S. This blew up. I am proud that my first silver is on a comment about respecting British culture. 19-year dude. How do you cook a fried egg? Gave him instructions and left him to it. Came back a while later to ask how it went. Fine in the end, but it took a few attempts because the yolk kept breaking. What do you mean kept breaking? Well, I kept throwing them away because I thought breaking the yolk made it poisonous. Once again, he was 19 years old. 3 months into our freshman year of college, a friend of mine developed a rash. I suggested he look into hypoallergenic sheets and swap out his others. His response: "I've used the same sheets since we moved in. It's not the sheets, mind you, not the same type of sheets, but the same exact sheets, unchanged and slept eaten upon etc. for 3 months." Worked at an on-campus store that sold a lot of essentials for students living at dorms. I had one girl ask me what laundry detergent was because she never did laundry. She asked if I could help her do her laundry, but I declined as I couldn't leave the register, which of course she was mad about. Sorry, I have to actually do my job, lady. In a weird way I am jealous of those people. I've done crap like that since I was physically able to, and I can honestly say they haven't missed much. I appreciate how, hopefully, it shaped me into a better person, but come on, it's boring AF. My friend in college once lamented, "Ugh, I have to pee and I just put a tampon in like 5 minutes ago. I hate having to pull them out to dry. Also, it's such a waste." Her mother taught her that there is only one hole down there and peeing with a tampon in is not possible. It will freak up your bladder. Took a lot of me showing articles and diagrams and answering questions to convince her there are, indeed, 2 holes. She peed while the tampon was still in and called her mother in utter shock to share the good news. Oh dear God. Roommate in college was 22, had lived in an apartment for 3 years prior to moving in together. Legitimately did not know how to remove a trash bag from a trash can. We had the simplest trash can possible, had never turned on an oven before, and, my favorite, complained one day that their bathroom was always sopping wet every time they showered. Finally realized that they never put up a shower curtain. They learned quickly and became a pretty good cook by the time I moved out, but man, their parents really never prepared them for living alone. Like, I know it's technically the parents' fault in these instances, but at a certain age surely the ability to Google literally anything places the blame squarely on the individual's shoulders. Oh gosh, I have a few from when I first went to university, living in halls and realizing some people literally did not know how to cook a thing. There was one girl who bought chicken and kept it in the cupboard, despite being told by pretty much everyone else in the flat that it was meant to go in the fridge or freezer. Flat out refused to listen, kept putting it in the cupboard. Don't know how she didn't get sick. Another flatmate who didn't eat potato for almost a year because he didn't know how to peel them and didn't want to try. I tried to teach him. Then he realized he could buy pre-prepared. One guy who decided to take a nap whilst cooking sausages for dinner. Just left them in the grill and only woke up when the fire alarms were going off and the whole building was being evacuated. Finally, 2 girls who again almost caused a fire if I hadn't found them. These 2 were actually my friends and I was looking for them. Found them in one of the kitchens about to cook a stir fry. They had a wok with about an inch depth of oil in the bottom, shimmering because it was so hot, and they weren't sure if it was hot enough to cook with yet. They were really glad I found them because they couldn't tell that it was boiling oil and were worried the food wouldn't cook. I was really glad I found them because if they had thrown their stir fry veg in there it would have probably caused a fire, or at least spat boiling oil all over them. I turned it off and tossed one piece of veg in there. Turned black almost instantly. Honestly, I was just shocked and appalled that so many 18-year-olds had never cooked for themselves before, and even worse that their parents had sent them off to fend for themselves not having taught them. It's actually scary thinking back. A friend who was pushing 40 had never paid a bill before. She had gone from living with her parents to living in a dorm to living with her parents again until she got married, then she got divorced and was living on her own for the first time. Got a text from her asking if my power was out too, then she realized it was just her. Her excuse was she never paid attention to the bills because she thought they were receipts and that the cost was included in her rent. Her water was cut off a couple weeks later and we had to talk about that, too. I have many great stories about my former college roommate. Two of my favorites are, she wanted to make pasta. She put a pot on the stove and poured the noodles in. No water in the pot. Turned on the stove. After a while she asked me how come these aren't getting soft like when my mom makes them. She made brownies from a box. The box instructions say grease the bottom of an 8x8 pan before pouring in the brownie batter. You bet your butt this bee picked up the 8x8 pan, flipped it over, greased the bottom of it, and then flipped it back over and poured in the brownie batter. The brownie pan one made me laugh out loud in the bathroom. The consequence about it, A+ material. My GF's grandfather had started to be, let's say, less accurate when peeing standing and leaving a mess in the washroom. I suggested that there's nothing wrong with sitting down for peeing and that would make life easier for everybody. All her family stared at me like in shock. True, my GF and her family didn't know that males can pee while sitting. Everybody in that family thought that as a male, the only physical way to pee is standing. I was almost asked to demonstrate in front of them that it's possible. My girlfriend, now wife, put a pan of oil on too high of heat and it hit the flash point and caught fire. She freaked out and went to get a large thing of water and I stopped her and tossed the pan lid on top until the flames went out. Then she asked me why I stopped her. I was very thankful that I was there the first time she had a grease fire. Not only could she have hurt herself but it was in a college dorm and the whole friggin' place could have gone up. Back in 06 or 07. Was working selling a software licensing product to software vendors. I was working with a 50-something Californian lady, I'm from the UK, who was handling some of the incoming enquiries through our website. One day she asks, hey, we had a lead today from a company in Egypt. What should I do with it? I said, well, follow it up of course. Why would you ask? She goes, because they're Arabs, and we're at war with the Arabs aren't we? FML. I then had to give her an education on the Middle East. If only the Middle East and Central Asian situation was that easy. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.